Hello, Paul Sloan here. I help organizations improve innovation. I run workshops and facilitate brainstorms with clients all around the world. And in an earlier webinar, I explained some of the general principles and structure of a brainstorm. What I'd like to do in this very short webinar is give you two specific methods which are very easy to use and which will generate a lot of good ideas for you quickly. So the first method is called the Nominal Method, and I'll describe it to you. Everyone sits around and starts with a blank sheet of paper, and they write numbers 1 to 10 down the left-hand side of the paper, and they write the challenge at the top of the piece of paper. This is the Nominal Method. So that whatever the challenge is, you write at the top. We're here today to find ways of how can we significantly improve customer service, how can we double our average order value, how can we get 100 people to come to our seminar. Whatever it is, you write down the challenge. And then everyone, starting with their own sheet of paper and working silently and individually, writes down 5 different ideas to meet the challenge. Now, it helps if you've discussed it a little beforehand. You may have done some problem analysis. You may have done some mind maps of some of the issues. So you might have some background. You may have told people before this to think about it before they came. Typically, there's some little preparation for this. But the idea is that they write down 5 ideas off the top of their head to meet the challenge. And these can be reasonable ideas, or they can be unreasonable ideas. They don't have to be workable at this stage. They're just starting points for ideas. You then pass the sheet around the table in the same direction, say to your left or clockwise around the table. And then each person receives a sheet with 5 ideas on, and they write 3 new ideas, 3 fresh ideas on the sheet. Not ones they've written before and not ones that are already there. So they read what they receive and they add 3 new ones. And when I'm facilitating this, I say at least one of these should be wacky. At least one of these should be a little bit bizarre. And you give them a few moments to do this, and they write down 3 new ideas. Some people find this easy, some people find it difficult, but even if it's a little uncomfortable, that's good, because you're making people use their imagination. You then pass the sheet again, and you now receive a sheet with 8 ideas on from 2 different people. You read those. If you can't read their writing, you go back and ask them what they meant by their idea. And then you have to think of 2 entirely fresh ideas, 2 new ideas, to write in at numbers 9 and 10 on the sheet of paper. So you now have 10 ideas on the sheet in front of you. And if there are 10 people in the meeting, then you've already got 100 ideas in the room. And one of the first things in brainstorming in the idea generation is to get quantity. You've got quantity very quickly here. Now, some of those ideas will be duplicates. Some of them will be silly. Some of them will be unworkable. But in 100 ideas, you should have at least 2 or 3 or 4 good ideas. So your task then is to find them. And what you do, you can either share all 100 ideas and eliminate the duplicates and pair them or match them up and so on. What I tend to do is use an accelerated method where I take those sheets and I pass them one more time. So you pass the sheet again to your left, which means that each individual receives a sheet with 10 ideas on it, none of which is his or her idea. So there's no ownership of those ideas. And then what I ask them to do is to read those 10 ideas and select the 2 best. And I tell them the criteria to use. And I use the synectics criteria. So I say, which of these 2 ideas appeal to you most in that they are novel, they are attractive to you and to customers and to the audience that would be using them, and they're feasible. Feasible means possible. Feasible does not mean easy. It means can be done. And I sometimes say choose one which is safe and solid and choose one which is a little bit unusual and maybe bizarre for this organization. But you don't have to do it that way. That's just to make sure that you get some of the more creative ideas coming through. But each individual then selects 2. Now, if you've got 10 people in the room, you're now down to 20 ideas. I would then divide the people into teams, say 3 3s or 2 5s, and get them to discuss their short list of ideas and to select the best 1 or 2 from each group and then present those back. So in this process, what happens is, in the divergent thinking stage, the idea creation stage, people work individually and silently, and they have to each generate 10 ideas. And then in the convergent or idea selection stage, people initially work on their own, then work in groups, and you whittle down the ideas and you get the best ideas out of that. And typically you'll get good incremental ideas for this. This method works very well for good, solid suggestions for moving the business forward. It's not quite so good for really creative ideas, but I'll tell you other methods which are. The benefits of this method are that it's very good for introverts. It's very good for quiet people. It's very good if you've got noisy, dominant people in the room who would normally dominate a conversation and try and force their ideas through. They can't do that with this method. It forces you to think. It forces each individual. There's no hiding place. You can't just take a back seat in this brainstorm and say, I'll let other people come up with the ideas and I'll just cruise. Everyone has to come up with 10 ideas. And whether they're the junior clerk or the CEO, those ideas effectively have the same weight when they go into the mill. So you don't get egos and personalities and structures and hierarchies dominating, which can happen in some brainstorms if you've got an open meeting and an open discussion. So that's what's good about this method. What's not good about it is that you don't get the spark and the energy and the enthusiasm when you get a lively brainstorm where one idea triggers another idea and people are bouncing ideas all around the room. But there are other methods where you can get that. So I would often use this in conjunction with a more creative, a more lively method. But if you want a starting point to get a lot of ideas quickly, then the nominal method works really well, and it eliminates the issue of the manager being in the room or dominant personalities. So that's the nominal method, which I'd like to introduce you to. I'll mention one other method in this webinar, which also works very well, and which is also easy to facilitate. I think the nominal method is very easy to facilitate. The next method is called reverse the problem. And with reverse the problem, everyone working silently and individually writes down 2 ideas to make the problem worse. Not better, but worse. And not a little bit worse, but much worse. So say the problem is how to improve customer service. Everyone will write down ideas to make customer service worse. Not a little bit worse, much, much worse. We employ people who don't know what they're talking about. We insult customers. We don't answer the phone. We have a website that crashes every 5 minutes. You know, all of these sorts of ideas, you write them down. And this is funny. It's amusing. People are laughing while they're doing this. You then read them out and you take one, and you don't agonize over which one is the best one, because you don't know until you try it. And you take one idea, which is a negative idea, and then you generate positive ideas from it. And the facilitator helps here. So they say, what's the opposite of this? So let me give you an example. We did this with a customer, and it was about how to improve customer service. And one of the negative ideas to actually make the customer service worse was to print all the manuals in Serbian. All right. So the only way you could get the product manual would be if it was in Serbian. So they said, what's the opposite of this? And we had on the flip chart, and somebody said, well, you print it in English. Or what else? You print it in plain English. You print it in English that a 10-year-old could understand. You test it with a 10-year-old. What else? You print it in local languages. What else? You print it in cartoons where the people don't even need to be able to read. So you have diagrams and cartoons that explain it. What else? Well, we have a video podcast. So you have a video on YouTube for the manual. So instead of having to read a manual, you'd go online and you'd either download a clip or view it on YouTube or transfer it onto your mobile phone and take it with you. So from the one negative idea, which was print the manuals in Serbian, we got a whole bunch of positive ideas, some of which were quite creative. And then we moved on to the next question and the next negative and generated ideas from that. So the way this works is you focus in on one particular area of service, the manuals, and you look at lots of then you took another area of service, the website or telephone response or customer care, and you get lots of ideas in that specific area. You then go through all the ideas and you select the best one. And this will generate a lot of good incremental ideas and some creative ideas too. It's fun and it generates lots of ideas. And I'll tell you where it's also good. If you've got cynical or negative people in your team, then you say to them, how can we make the problem worse? And they'll say, oh, I can tell you how you can make it worse. You can do this, you can do that. Very good. Thank you, John. That's excellent. Really good ideas. Now let's see how we can turn those around. So anyone can think of ways of making the problem worse. And just by doing that, you're focusing on a particular area where you can also make things better. So those are two methods I would commend to you in your next brainstorm meeting. The nominal method, where you pass the sheets around, and reverse the problem, where initially people think of ways of making the problem worse, and then they move on to positive ideas to make it better. Both of those methods will work well for you. So on the final slide, we have my contact details, my website, and my email address. Please get in touch with me if I can be of help, or if you want me to facilitate your meeting. Thank you.